Saturday marks the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. More and more incidents are being reported in which Muslims are being targeted for their religious beliefs or political views. It's prompted a warning from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres about racial profiling and discriminatory policies that violate human rights and dignity. For more on this, our Andy Rosejan joins us live now from Dearborn in Michigan. So Andy, what's the mood like there? As we know, Dearborn has a very high Muslim population. Do the Muslims there feel like Islamophobia is getting worse or better?
You know, they feel like there are warning signs, if not ever since Donald Trump took over as president about a month and a half ago. Dearborn, southeast Michigan, home to the largest population of Muslims in America. And they feel like it is sort of ironic here because Trump did win the Muslim vote back in November. A lot of Muslims felt, obviously, they were disgusted by the Biden administration, and a lot of them felt like the election of Donald Trump would at least jolt the Gaza ceasefire talks, which you could argue it did. But now comes this creeping buyer's remorse. We know, of course, Trump, as we've talked about, talking about clearing out the Palestinians out of Gaza. Also, the arrest and possible deportation of, as you said, Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University pro-Palestinian student organizer. That's caused a huge problem for Muslims here. And even in the last couple of days, Efron, Trump used the word Palestinian as a slur, a criticism against a U.S. senator. So there's this feeling that his election and his rhetoric and his actions are sort of opening up the door to more Islamophobia, and they're just kind of hanging on, feeling like maybe, yes, for those who did vote for him, there's a little bit of regret creeping in here.
Right, and everyone has their own story to tell about Islamophobia. I have a handful of them myself. What are you hearing there, Andy?
You know, it's for everyone around the world. It often starts in school. As you know, Afnan, you get a dirty look from somebody or a slur that's muttered under somebody's breath. I talked to an attorney here, a woman who is actually the head of the Arab American Bar Association of Michigan, and she told me for her, it was when she was 9 years old, Halloween of 2001, right after the September 11th attacks, and her mom wouldn't let her go out trick-or-treating in the neighborhoods around here because she was afraid that because she was veiled, somebody might hurt her as they go in the neighborhoods to do their trick-or-treating. So that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you. And she also told me that to this day, there's one slur in particular that bothers her.
It's so silly and it's so ironic to have someone tell you, hey, go back to your country, when we would love to if we could, but we can't because the West is so obsessed with robbing us of our natural resources.
Now, if there's one thing that you kind of hear around here that's encouraging is that during the last year or so, year and a half of these pro-Palestinian demonstrations here in America, they feel like that has at least raised awareness about Muslim and Arab issues. It's given more of a permission to be more accepting, especially for the young people. But again, Efnan, with Donald Trump in office now and a lot of these moves, there are these warning signs that, you know, I talked to the head of the Islamic Center of America here in Dearborn, and he said, yes, he's hopeful in the long term for fighting Islamophobia, but not hopeful in the short term over these next 4 years.
Indeed. Andy Rosejan live for us there in Dearborn, Michigan. Thank you, Andy, for that. Well, religious intolerance is also spreading across Europe, with several reported incidents of hate speech targeting people of different faiths, including Muslims. In Germany last year, there were more than 1,500 criminal acts targeting Muslims and properties belonging to Muslims. One rights organization says no other religion is labeled more negatively in the German parliament than Islam. In the U.S., discrimination and attacks against American Muslims and Arabs rose by 7.4% in 2024. A rights group there says this was due to heightened Islamophobia caused by Israel's massacre in Gaza and the resulting college campus protests. A new report on Islamophobia in Australia has found a steep increase in assaults, abuse, and threats between January of 2023 and November 2024. Muslim women were overwhelmingly the victims. About half of the recorded incidents happened in New South Wales, home to the largest population of Muslim Australians. Danielle Robertson reports.
Across Australia, symbols of Islam stand tall. There are hundreds of mosques and nearly 1 million people who identify as Muslim. The strongest community presence is in the state of New South Wales, but it's here that Islamophobia is also most prevalent, something that Abubakar Rafiq says he has faced his whole life.
First time I experienced Islamophobia was, at the age of 10, and ever since then it's kind of followed me, especially in the past year and a half when Israel has launched its genocide in Gaza. The Islamophobia has just reached the levels I've never experienced before.
Rafiq says his worst experience was in May last year while he was protesting at a Gaza Solidarity encampment at the University of Sydney.
When I was physically assaulted, a group of about 8 to 9 members came. Every one of them had cameras in hand, and once I stepped in front of a camera, one of the members pushed me and pretty much tried to get me onto the ground.
In a statement to TRT World, New South Wales Police said the matter was reported to officers, but no charges were laid due to a lack of evidence. The incident is one of more than 900 that have been reported to the Islamophobia Register since October 7th, an increase of 540% on the previous year. Their most recent statistics were released last month in response to comments by Liberal Senator David Sharma, who said that Islamophobia was fictitious.
Rhetoric that Islamophobia doesn't exist or it's not real, it's normalizing it that, Muslim lives don't matter. So this is that part of the structural racism and structural Islamophobia. We know the statistics reported to us are really only the tip of the iceberg.
This viral video taken in a shopping centre in southwest Sydney shows a woman unleashing a verbal attack on a Muslim mother over her T-shirt that had the phrase, "From the river to the sea."
From the river to the sea, you are. Get Allah.
Miriam Tahami was behind the camera.
It was quite terrifying. She started to make hand gestures indicating that she will end my life. And one of those gestures was very slowly slitting my throat. And my daughter was there.
The same perpetrator allegedly attempted to hit a sheikh with her car outside this school where he works. A joint statement by prominent Muslim organisations, including the Australian National Imams Council, said the woman ruthlessly targeted a Muslim community leader. The Federal Minister for Home Affairs, Tony Burke, responded to the incident, saying the targeting of Australians based on their religious beliefs will never be tolerated. Last year, the government also announced the appointment of a special envoy to combat Islamophobia across the country. But some community members say more needs to be done.
It's better policies addressing the system, dismantling the systems that have been created against the Muslim community and that have been built on Islamophobic principles. The best thing is to remain strong and be proud of your identity.
Despite rising attacks, his pride is unwavering. Danielle Robertson, TRT World, Sydney.
Well, India has seen a sharp rise in mob lynching and hate speech in the last few years. The rise of Islamophobic Hindu nationalists is thought to be largely responsible, but several voluntary organizations are fighting Islamophobia and providing support to victims. Smita Sharma reports from New Delhi.
38-year-old Mehnaz volunteers with Karwan-e-Mohabbat, or the Caravan of Love. It's a people's nationwide civilian campaign devoted to upholding the constitution that supports survivors of hate crimes legally and socially. Started in 2017 by noted human rights activist Harsh Mandar, the organization works closely with families of mob lynching and riot victims.
The way certain specific communities are being targeted and people are being lynched in different places, it was important to work on those issues. Because the dead are gone, but families left behind face immense struggles and difficulties. Harsh Mandar takes a caravan, goes and meets families and tells them that we are there with you in these times of grief, and then we fight legal battles.
Every day there are reports of Muslim homes being bulldozed and physical attacks on communities. Counseling traumatized families isn't easy. Supreme Court advocate Anas Tanveer is worried about deepening polarization and Islamophobia across India. He's trying to encourage Hindus and Muslims to interact more with one another.
And once this interaction, once there is an acceptance that yes, we are different, but we are not enemy. We may have different rituals, we may have different practice, we may have different history, but at this point we are not each other's enemy. That is how we can curtail Islamophobia. For an organization, we drafted a bill against Islamophobia. That was a Muslim organization. But that bill was drafted by my team, and none of those team members were Muslims. It was drafted all by Hindus. Similarly, I believe that if there's an attack on Hindus, Muslims should come in front and stand for them, and vice versa.
Hate speech became more widespread during last year's political rallies. That's according to a recent India Hate Lab report. While Hindu nationalism is fanning Islamophobia, there are still many who are defending those being targeted. Smita Sharma, TRT World, New Delhi.